Straight from the Bible. You've never heard Moses' story like this before. Let's go on a journey with Moses together and get a feel for what it is like. Pause the video at any time to fact-check with the Bible. I will show you the Bible verses for you to follow along, or just relax and enjoy the Bible story of Moses' journey to the Promised Land. God has put this in my heart, and my intention is for you to truly feel what it is like to journey with Moses for 40 years. Before we begin, please tell me where you are watching this video from. This will let me know how far this video reaches around the world. For the Thai version of the speaking, the link is down below in this video description. Let's start our journey. According to the itinerary recorded in the Bible Book of Numbers, chapter 33, the Israelites made a total of 42 stops for campsites during their journey from Egypt to the Promised Land. The Israelites left Ramesses, Egypt, for Sukkot, the first campsite, on the 15th day of the first month, leaving with a high hand after the Passover. The Israelites go out of Egypt, carrying Joseph's bones in front and leading the way. Exodus 13 verse 19. Sukkot was the first significant and likely crowded campsite for the Israelites after exiting Ramesses, Egypt, characterized by the setting up of temporary, hasty booths or tents to accommodate the mass gathering. It was a key, active staging point on the edge of Egypt, where the people began the initial tumultuous phase of their journey before continuing to Etham, the second campsite. Key activity at Sukkot. Initial camping. The name Sukkot, meaning booths or huts, refers to the temporary dwellings the Israelites set up for the first time. Preparation for journey. It was here, after leaving Ramesses, that the Israelites camped and organized before continuing toward the wilderness. Divine guidance. The pillar of cloud by day and fire by night is described as appearing to guide them, likely beginning to appear for their onward journey from this first stop. Gathering point. Some interpretations suggest this location was a gathering point for families in the region after fleeing Egypt, allowing them to consolidate, as highlighted in this study on the Israelite journey. Breakdown of the journey. Biblical scholars often divide these 42 stations into 3 distinct phases of the 40-year wandering. From Egypt to Sinai, 12 campsites. The initial leg of the journey, where the Israelites left Ramesses and eventually reached the desert of Sinai. From Sinai to Kadesh, 21 campsites. A longer series of movements through various wilderness locations before reaching the critical staging point of Kadesh. From Kadesh to the plains of Moab, 9 campsites. The final leg that led them to the edge of the Jordan River, opposite Jericho. Key observations. Starting point. The journey began at Ramesses on the 15th day of the first month, immediately following the first Passover. Final campsite. The list concludes at the plains of Moab by the Jordan River, where they prepared to cross into Canaan. Symbolism. Many commentators note that the 42 stops may hold symbolic weight, sometimes comparing them to the 42 generations from Abraham to Jesus listed in the New Testament. The 38-year gap. A significant portion of the 40 years was spent at Kadesh, following the rebellion described in Numbers 14. The full list of 42 campsites, often called the Stations of the Exodus, is meticulously recorded in Numbers 33. While some stops were brief and have no recorded activities, others were sites of major miracles, rebellions, or transitions. Let's journey together with Moses and get a feel for what it's like to travel alongside the Israelites and their activities from the first campsite to the last campsite. Campsite number 1, Sukkot, the very first stop. Here they began dwelling in booths and possibly celebrated the first Passover after leaving Egypt. Campsite number 2, Etham. Located on the edge of the wilderness, the pillars of cloud and fire appeared here to guide them. 3. Pi-Hahiroth, the site of the miraculous crossing of the Red Sea and the destruction of Pharaoh's army. Pi-Hahiroth is arguably the most dramatic stop in the entire Exodus journey. It was the third campsite after Ramesses and Etham, and it was the stage for the crossing of the Red Sea. According to the Bible, Exodus chapter 14, here are the details of what happened at this specific location. 1. The divine trap. God gave Moses very specific instructions to turn back and camp at Pi-Hahiroth, between Migdal and the sea, directly opposite Baal-zephon. The strategy. God told Moses that by camping there, essentially backing themselves into a corner with the sea at their backs, Pharaoh would think the Israelites were entangled in the land and lost. The bait. This was a deliberate move to lure Pharaoh into chasing them so that God could show his final victory over the Egyptian army. 2. The approach of Pharaoh. Just as predicted, when Pharaoh realized the Israelites were pinned against the sea at Pi-Hahiroth, he changed his mind about letting them go. He pursued them with 600 of his best chariots and all the other chariots of Egypt. The panic. When the Israelites saw the dust of the approaching army, they were terrified. They turned on Moses, famously crying out, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die?" 3. The pillar of cloud and fire. As the Egyptian army closed in at Pi-Hahiroth, the pillar of cloud, which usually led the Israelites from the front, moved to the rear. It stood between the Egyptian camp and the Israelite camp. For the Egyptians, it brought darkness. For the Israelites, it provided light, preventing the two armies from coming near each other all night. 4. The parting of the sea. Moses stood at the edge of the water at Pi-Hahiroth and stretched out his hand. The east wind. God sent a strong east wind that blew all night, pushing the waters back and turning the sea floor into dry land. At the crossing, the Israelites marched through the middle of the sea on dry ground, with walls of water on their right and their left. 5. The destruction of the Egyptians. As morning broke, the Egyptians pursued them into the dry seabed. God threw the Egyptian army into a panic and caused their chariot wheels to come off, making them drive heavily. Once the Israelites were safely on the other side, Moses stretched his hand out again, and the waters collapsed, drowning Pharaoh's entire army. Not one of them survived. This event at Pi-Hahiroth changed Israel from a group of fleeing refugees into a nation that finally feared the Lord and put their trust in him. Campsite number 4. Marah. Named for its bitter water, which Moses turned sweet by throwing a tree branch into it. At Marah, the fourth stop, the euphoria of the Red Sea victory quickly met the harsh reality of the desert. This campsite is defined by a crisis of thirst and the first of many grumbling episodes. According to Exodus 15 verses 22 to 26, here are the details. 1. The crisis. Bitter water. After crossing the Red Sea, the Israelites traveled for 3 days into the wilderness of Shur without finding any water. When they finally reached an oasis, they were devastated to find the water was undrinkable. The problem. The water was bitter, which is why the place was named Marah, the Hebrew word for bitter. The reaction. Exhausted and dehydrated, the people grumbled against Moses, asking, "What are we to drink?" 2. The miracle. The tree. Moses did what he would do throughout the journey. He cried out to the Lord. The instruction. God showed Moses a specific piece of wood or a tree branch. The healing. Moses threw the wood or tree branch into the water, and the water instantly became sweet and fit for drinking.
This water is bitter, we cannot drink it. The Lord will provide. Bring me that branch. It's sweet. The water is sweet.
3. The statute and the test. God used the event at Marah to establish a formal statute and ordinance for the people. This was a precursor to the law they would receive at Sinai. The promise. God promised that if they would listen carefully to his voice and keep his commands, he would not bring upon them any of the diseases he brought on the Egyptians. The new name. It was here that God revealed one of his descriptive names, Jehovah Rapha, meaning the Lord who heals you. 4. Transition to Elim. The stay at Marah was short. Once they were refreshed and the bitter situation was resolved, they moved to the 5th stop, Elim, which was a complete contrast, featuring 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees. Marah is often seen as a symbolic lesson that God can sweeten the bitter circumstances of life through obedience. Campsite number 5. Elim. a refreshing oasis with 12 springs and 70 palm trees. Campsite number 6. By the Red Sea, a re-encampment near the sea mentioned specifically in Numbers 33 verse 10. Campsite number 7. Wilderness of Sin. God provided manna and quail for the first time after the people grumbled about hunger. At the Wilderness of Sin, the seventh stop located between Elim and Sinai, the Israelites faced a severe food shortage. This campsite is famous as the location where God first provided manna and quail, as recorded in Exodus 16. The grumbling for food. Exactly 1 month after leaving Egypt, the Israelites' supplies ran out. The complaint. The people accused Moses and Aaron of bringing them into the desert to starve. Nostalgia for slavery. They claimed they sat by flesh pots in Egypt and ate bread to the full, preferring comfortable slavery to hungry freedom. The provision of manna and quail. God responded to their hunger by providing food from both the sky and the ground. Evening quail. In the evening, a massive flight of quail covered the camp, providing the meat the people craved. Morning manna. Every morning after the dew evaporated, a fine, flake-like thing remained on the ground. The people asked, "Man who? What is it?" Which gave it the name manna. Tasted like wafers made with honey. The rules of the manna. God used the manna to test the people's obedience through specific instructions. Daily gathering. Each person was to gather 1 omer, about 2 quarts, per day. No leftovers. They were forbidden from keeping it overnight. Those who tried found it bred worms and stank by morning. The Sabbath double portion. On the 6th day they gathered twice as much. Miraculously, this portion did not spoil, allowing them to rest on the Sabbath. The first time the Sabbath rest was formally instituted for the nation. The memorial jar. To remember this miracle, God commanded Moses to take an omer of manna and put it in a golden jar. This jar was later placed inside the Ark of the Covenant as a testimony for future generations. The Wilderness of Sin serves as a major turning point where God transitioned from providing water at Marah and Elim to providing daily food. Campsite number 8. Dafka, a transition camp with little recorded activity. Campsite number 9. Alush, another transition camp on the way to Sinai. Campsite number 10. Rephidim. Moses struck a rock to produce water. The Israelites also fought and defeated the Amalekites here. At Rephidim, the 10th stop, the Israelites faced 2 of their most significant early challenges: a desperate lack of water and their first military battle. These events are recorded in Exodus 17 and Exodus 18.
I'm so thirsty, there is no water here. Let's go complain to Moses. Yes, we must. This is unbearable. To Moses, then.
Water from the rock. Upon arriving, there was no water for the people to drink. This led to a crisis of faith and leadership. The quarrel. The people complained so bitterly that Moses feared they would stone him. They questioned, "Is the Lord among us or not?" The miracle. God commanded Moses to take his staff and strike a specific rock at Horeb. When he did, water gushed out for the nation. The names. Moses named the place Massah, testing, and Meribah, quarreling, because of the Israelites' lack of trust. The battle against Amalek. While at Rephidim, the Israelites were unexpectedly attacked by the Amalekites. This was their first experience with warfare since leaving Egypt. Joshua's command. Moses appointed Joshua to lead the soldiers into battle. The raised staff. Moses stood on a hill overlooking the battlefield with the staff of God in his hand. Intercession. As long as Moses held his hands up, Israel prevailed. When he lowered them, Amalek prevailed. Aaron and Hur. When Moses became exhausted, Aaron and Hur stood on either side of him, holding his arms up until sunset, ensuring total victory. Jehovah Nissi. Afterward, Moses built an altar and called it Yahweh Nissi. The Lord is my banner. The visit of Jethro. Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, arrived at Rephidim bringing Moses' wife and 2 sons. The advice. Seeing Moses working from morning until night settling disputes, Jethro warned him he would burn out. The judiciary. Jethro suggested a system of judges, leaders of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens, to handle minor cases, leaving only the most difficult matters for Moses. Moses implemented this immediately. Campsite number 11. Wilderness of Sinai. The most critical stop where they stayed for a year, received the 10 Commandments, and built the tabernacle. The wilderness of Sinai was the most transformative stop in Israel's history. While most campsites lasted only days or weeks, the Israelites remained here for nearly a year, roughly 11 months and 20 days, evolving from a group of escaped slaves into a formal nation under God's law. According to Exodus 19 through Numbers 10, here is the sequence of events that occurred at this stop. In the 3rd month after the people of Israel had gone out of the land of Egypt, on that day they came into the wilderness of Sinai. Moses went up Mount Sinai several times to meet God, as recorded in Exodus 19, 20, 24, 32, and 34. First ascent. Exodus chapter 19, verses 2 to 7. Second ascent. Exodus chapter 19, verse 8. Third ascent. Exodus chapter 19, verses 10 to 11, verse 16, verses 18 to 19. Fourth ascent. Exodus chapter 19, verses 20 to 25. Fifth ascent. Exodus chapter 20, verse 21. Sixth ascent. Exodus chapter 24, chapter 32, verse 19. Seventh ascent. Exodus chapter 32, verse 32. Eighth ascent. Exodus chapter 34, verses 1 to 2. In the 3rd ascent, the Lord told Moses to warn the people not to come near the mountain or they will die. The mountain is holy, and sin cannot come near. In the 6th ascent, this is where he continues for 40 days and 40 nights. Exodus chapter 24 verses 15 to 18. God gives Moses much information. 10 commandments written on tablets of stone by God himself, complete instructions on how to build the tabernacle, the Ark of the Covenant, and the altar, specifications for the priestly garments, etc. Exodus chapters 24 to 31. At the foot of the mountain, the Israelites had Aaron build the golden calf and were committing idolatry. When Moses and Joshua descend the mountain in Exodus chapter 32 verses 19 to 35 and see what the people are doing, Moses breaks the stone tablets in anger. He then destroys the golden calf and disciplines the people. He took the calf that they had made, burned it with fire, ground it to powder, scattered it on the water, and made the people of Israel drink it. Aaron's excuse for himself. When Moses saw that the people were naked, because Aaron had made them naked unto their shame among their enemies, then Moses stood at the gate of the camp and said, "Who is on the Lord's side? Let him come unto me."
Who is on the Lord's side? Let him come to me.
And all the sons of Levi gathered around him. Thus says the Lord God of Israel, "Put your sword on your side each of you, and go in and out from gate to gate throughout the camp, and slay every man his brother, and every man his companion, and every man his neighbor." About 3,000 men died in the subsequent judgment carried out by the Levites. Construction of the tabernacle. After Moses returned to the mountain to receive a second set of tablets, the nation spent several months as a giant construction crew. The blueprint. They built the tabernacle, a portable tent temple, the Ark of the Covenant, the golden lampstand, and the altar. The priesthood. Aaron and his sons were consecrated as priests. Tragedy struck during this time when Aaron's sons, Nadab and Abihu, offered strange fire and were consumed by God's fire. Here is a breakdown of the specific sins committed by Nadab and Abihu, based on biblical commentary and text. Offering unauthorized fire, strange fire. They brought incense before God using fire, likely from a common or profane source, rather than the holy fire from the brazen altar that God had explicitly commanded for this purpose. Leviticus chapter 16 verses 12. Leviticus chapter 10 verse 1. Presumption and disobedience. They acted without authorization or command, relying on their own initiative instead of following the strict protocols instituted for the priesthood. Irreverence and overfamiliarity. They failed to treat God as holy, treating their sacred duties casually, perhaps presuming upon their privilege as leaders who had previously seen God's glory. The potential intoxication. Following their deaths, God immediately gave a law prohibiting priests from drinking wine or strong drink before entering the tabernacle, leading many to conclude that Nadab and Abihu were intoxicated and thus unable to distinguish between the holy and the common. A violation of sacrificial boundaries. They likely engaged in priestly actions that were reserved for the high priest alone. The significance of the event. The swift punishment, fire from the Lord consuming them, was meant to demonstrate that God's holiness is non-negotiable and that those who come near him must sanctify him before all people. What happened to Aaron? When Moses explained that this occurred because God would be sanctified by those who approach him, Aaron held his peace. Leviticus chapter 10 verse 3, recognizing the severity of the offense. The glory. Once the tabernacle was completed, the cloud of glory descended and filled the tent, signaling God's dwelling among them. The giving of the law Leviticus. While camped here, the entire book of Leviticus was dictated. This established the sacrificial system for atonement. Dietary laws, kosher and purity rituals. The feast days, Passover, Pentecost, tabernacles, etc. The first census and organization. Before moving, God commanded a census of all men 20 years and older fit for war. The count. The total came to 603,550 men, excluding Levites. Camp order. God organized the tribes into a specific square formation, with the tabernacle at the center. Each tribe was assigned a specific side, north, south, east, west, and a specific order for marching. The departure. On the 20th day of the second month in the second year, the cloud of glory lifted from the tabernacle. The silver trumpets. 2 silver trumpets were blown to signal the camp to move out. The journey begins. They left the wilderness of Sinai and headed toward the wilderness of Paran. End of part 1. If you like this video, click follow and share it with others. Please tell me where you are watching this video from. This will let me know how far this video reaches around the world. May God bless and watch over you.